China was the most challenging trip I had ever planned. Getting the visas, figuring out transportation, downloading unfamiliar apps, working around internet restrictions, trying to understand the sheer size of the country. It required an immense amount of preparation. And then we arrived at the Beijing airport and discovered that preparing for China and actually functioning in China were two very different things. We were trying to find our DiDi, the Chinese version of Uber, but communicating with our driver was nearly impossible. There was the language barrier, the unfamiliar app, the confusing pickup area, and every car seemed to be exactly the same color. We were messaging the driver and staring into cars, trying to determine whether one of them contained a person who was desperately trying to find us. My son occasionally enjoyed pointing out that I was slower than he was at figuring things out, although as I recall, neither one of us found that car very quickly. Welcome to Beijing. In my previous video, I traveled solo to Hong Kong, where my 24-year-old son joined me for the rest of the journey. Hong Kong had felt surprisingly manageable. English was widely spoken, transportation was easy to understand, and I felt comfortable navigating the city. Beijing was a bit of a shock. No one at our hotel spoke English. The staff used a translation device to communicate with us, and even simple questions required several steps. At one point, we tried to use the hotel laundry facilities. The machines were covered in Chinese writing. We couldn't read the settings, and we had no idea what buttons to push. We stood there staring at a washing machine as though it might eventually take pity on us and explain itself. It did not. A nice older gentleman did eventually come help us by just pointing at the buttons to push to make it work. The maps we had on our phones weren't especially useful either. One evening, after dinner, we tried to walk back to our hotel. It should have been simple. Instead, we walked in circles, repeatedly checking the same unhelpful map and becoming less certain that our hotel still existed. We would think we were heading in the right direction, walk several minutes, and somehow end up back where we started. My son may have understood some of the technology faster, but it wasn't doing either of us much good that night. China is massive, and I knew there was a good chance I would never return. So I wanted to include as many of the major historical experiences I had heard about for years as reasonably possible. The Great Wall, the Forbidden City, the Summer Palace, the Terracotta Warriors, and, of course, a high-speed train. I had already visited the Big Buddha in Hong Kong, along with other Hong Kong attractions that I wanted to see. This was never going to be a relaxing vacation. It involved long travel days, unfamiliar systems, and a lot of moving around. But after doing all the work required to get there, I wanted to see the places that had made me curious about China in the first place. It was ambitious, exhausting, and totally worth it. Food was another challenge. We didn't see familiar restaurants, and we often couldn't tell what was being served simply by looking at a sign or menu. Sometimes that was part of the adventure. Other times, we were tired, hungry, and simply wanted to understand what we were ordering. We eventually found a fairly fancy restaurant inside the Summer Palace grounds where we felt comfortable. We liked it so much that we returned later. Sometimes adventurous travelers discover a tiny local restaurant hidden down an alley. Sometimes they find one manageable place and say, "Yes, we are coming back here." The Summer Palace itself was beautiful, built around an enormous lake which was frozen during our visit. Here we learned about an empress known as the Dragon Lady. She was a powerful and controversial woman. You can learn more about her through various films, including one called The Last Emperor of China and The Dragon Lady. Her story was fascinating. This is why I enjoy historical tours. I could admire the scenery on my own, but I want to know who lived there, who held the power, and which ambitious woman may have been quietly, or not so quietly, running everything. We also hired a guide for the Forbidden City, which was extremely beneficial. Without someone explaining what we were seeing, much of the history and symbolism would have been lost on us. The complex is enormous. For nearly 500 years, it served as the center of imperial power in China, and walking through it feels like passing through an endless series of gates, courtyards, and ceremonial buildings. The complex is enormous. It has served as the center of imperial power in China. Walking through it feels like passing through an endless series of gates, courtyards, and ceremonial buildings. It was also bitterly cold. We were bundled up, trying to absorb centuries of history while retaining feeling in our fingers. Our guide helped us understand how the palace functioned and what the architecture represented. It completely changed the experience. For the Great Wall, I hired a private driver and guide. After experiencing Beijing mostly on our own, this was one decision I never questioned. I would not visit the Great Wall any other way. Our guide spoke English extremely well. He handled the transportation, gave us the background we needed, and allowed us plenty of time to explore independently. When I first saw the wall stretching across the mountains, it didn't seem entirely real. I was standing on the Great Wall of China, the place I had read about and seen in photographs for most of my life. My son chose the more physically challenging route. I selected the easier direction. He could climb the steeper sections if he wanted without waiting for me, and I could enjoy the scenery without pretending I wanted to turn the Great Wall into an extreme athletic event. No photograph truly captures the scale of this immense monument. Then, because walking on one of the most famous structures in the world apparently wasn't enough, we rode a toboggan down. Expected, slightly ridiculous, and a lot of fun. Afterward, our guide took us to an on-site tea house, where we learned about the preparation and serving of several Chinese teas.
Now we can take a look after we make the tea, the leaves.
The calm ceremony was quite a contrast to flying down the mountain on a slide a few minutes earlier. And of course, we left with souvenirs, because I may travel carry-on only, but apparently tea still finds a way into my luggage. At nearly every major site, my son and I attracted attention. We visibly stood out, and young people would approach us for pictures, to practice English, or sometimes even to ask for an autograph. The interactions were friendly and curious. We had traveled to China because we were interested in the people and culture there. It was funny to realize that sometimes they were just as curious about us. One of the most entertaining nights we had in Beijing was seeing the Peking acrobats. The show combined centuries-old Chinese acrobatic traditions with modern lighting, music, and some truly unbelievable stunts. There was balancing, tumbling, contortion, and several moments when I honestly forgot to breathe. It was colorful, fast-paced, and such a fun addition to our time in Beijing. From Beijing, we traveled to Xi'an by high-speed train, another experience I had specifically wanted to include. The station was enormous and initially intimidating, especially because communication remained difficult. But the train was modern, comfortable, and remarkably efficient. Watching the landscape pass outside the window also helped us understand just how large China is. These cities may appear relatively close together on a map of the entire country. They are not. Xi'an was another very large city, but it felt different from Beijing. Our hotel was modern and beautiful, and we became fascinated by the service robots moving independently through the building. We would see the robots again in Shanghai, making them an unexpected theme of the trip. Xi'an was once an imperial capital and an important starting point of the Silk Road. It had the ancient history I came to see, but it also felt energetic, modern, and very much alive. The primary reason we came to Xi'an was to see the Terracotta Warriors, created more than 2,000 years ago to guard the tomb of China's first emperor. They were discovered by local farmers in 1974. Nothing prepares you for the scale of the excavation hall. Rows of warriors stretch across the enormous pit. It's only a fraction of what still remains and has yet to be uncovered under the soil. Some of the warriors have been restored and returned to formation. Others remain damaged or partially buried, showing the painstaking work involved in reconstructing them. The figures have different faces, hairstyles, clothing, and expressions. They do not look like mass-produced copies. They look like an army, each one an individual warrior. I had seen photographs for years, but standing in front of them made the discovery seem almost unbelievable. And remember, much of the emperor's burial complex still has not been excavated. One experience made our visit even more remarkable. We met one of the farmers credited with discovering the first fragments while digging a well near his village in 1974. Imagine going out to dig for water and accidentally uncovering one of the most important archaeological discoveries of the 20th century. Why can't that happen to me? One of the most fascinating experiences in Xi'an was visiting a night market. It was sensory overload in the best possible way. The lights, the crowds, the sounds, the steam rising from the food stalls, an enormous selection of foods we could not begin to identify. Sometimes we would watch how something was prepared and make an educated guess. Other times we had absolutely no idea what we were looking at. The market was colorful and unlike anything we would normally experience at home. It reminded us that China wasn't only about ancient monuments. Some of the most memorable moments came from simply walking through a city at night and observing everyday life. Traveling with my son made this part of the trip even more memorable. He occasionally teased me for being slower to understand the apps or technology. And to be fair, sometimes he did figure things out faster. Then one day, they help you use an app in China and act as though the balance of power has permanently shifted. But we worked well together. When one of us became frustrated, the other could usually keep trying. And when neither of us understood what was happening, at least we had someone to walk in circles with and laugh out loud with. China was the most challenging trip I had ever planned. The visas were complicated. The logistics took months of research. Communication was difficult. Even basic activities could require far more effort than expected. It was exhausting. But standing on the Great Wall, walking through the Forbidden City, and seeing the Terracotta Warriors made every bit of that planning worthwhile. But I didn't travel to China because I wanted it to feel familiar. I traveled there because I wanted to experience a part of the world and a history that was completely different from my own. And I did, even if I occasionally needed help from my son, and a translator device, and a private guide, and possibly a robot. Next, we traveled to Shanghai, where we experienced yet another version of China. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And please tell me in the comments, would the language barrier and unfamiliar technology make you nervous about visiting China, or would that be part of the adventure?